The following is an AZPM original production.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, get some recommendations for your spring reading list from visitors to the 2025 Tucson Festival of Books. Film essayist Christy Scheel looks at Corina, a new film from Mexico that shows some compassion towards living with anxiety. The class of 2024 continues with a story about a teacher who attempted to use shame to control their students. And this month's storyteller shares a milestone moment in her teenage life, getting her driver's license in Minnesota in 1964. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. This past weekend, an estimated 130,000 readers of all ages gathered on the University of Arizona campus for the 2025 Tucson Festival of Books. Next, we'll hear a few of them share the books that mean the most to them in a new installment of A Book I Love.
My name is Sonia. I love High Tide in Tucson by Barbara Kingsolver. And a quick story, my husband and I got to move to Europe, to Holland and then Spain, about a year or two after that came out, and I had packed that book with me. And I finally started reading it when we were on a ferry in between the Canary Islands of La Palma and Tenerife. And a nearby island was La Gomera, and lo and behold, there's a chapter in her book about her living in, I think, Tenerife and visiting La Gomera, which is where I was bound for on that ferry.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. So, there you go.
Hi, can you tell me your first name?
I'm Anna Marie.
And what brings you to the Festival of Books this year?
Well, I try to come every year. I'm volunteering this year at the Odyssey Storytelling booth. But I also came to see my favorite author, Richard Grant, who is a new favorite. I only learned about him a couple months ago. But he's talking in 3 panels.
Is the book you're going to tell us about, is it a Richard Grant book?
Yes.
Go ahead.
A Race to the Bottom of Crazy. He's a journalist, so he sort of interweaves his personal stories with his journalistic sensibility, and so they're really well researched, but also funny. You can't spell crazy without AZ. That's the theme of, that's the talk today. The Tucson Festival of Books is amazing. I've lived in many cities in this country, and I am always blown away by the spirit here and the community and everyone who comes out to support reading. I love it.
My name's David. I like reading. I like meeting authors, finding out about books, finding out things, areas that I don't normally read.
Well, tell us about a book that you love.
I found this book when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in South America in a bookstore that actually handled English language books, Traveling the Andes by Wimpier. And this man was a geographer, and really the mountains had never been mapped per se. They had very rough maps, but he went from mountain to mountain, locating both the height and accurate width of the base, basically, and just traveled down the Andes. And it's a fascinating story, both from a mapping standpoint, but also a cultural standpoint. He talks about the cultures he traveled through, and this was late 1910s, early 1920s. So things were a little different than they are now.
My first name is Nancy. I loved Where the Crawdads Sing. It was a beautiful story with a great characters, a very interesting twist, but I think I really loved how it was her first novel, and it really described the beauty of her surroundings and how somebody who could be really lost could also be found. So that was one of my favorites of recent lit.
My name is Jennifer.
What is a book that you would say you genuinely love that you'd like to recommend?
I actually just read it for the first time ever. It's called The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. It is a classic middle grade book. Don't read a lot of middle grade books, but it is a masterclass of how to build a mystery. It grips you in, it takes you through all these characters, and would recommend if you like mysteries, if you like middle grade, and if you just want a good whodunit. It's a good book.
My name is Roger Naylor, and I'm an author and was part of a panel today at the Western National Parks Association store talking about my latest book, Arizona National Parks and Monuments. But it's just so great to be out here at the festival and with so many people interested in reading and actually buying books, and I'm stocking up myself. But I'm going to go way back and talk about one of my favorite authors, one of the ones who really inspired me to branch out and try different things, and that's Elmore Leonard. He's very well known for writing a lot of kind of thrillers with a lot of dark humor and action, and just he's the best dialogue writer in the business, I think. Most of them are set in Florida or Detroit. He has a couple of locations he likes. But before he did any of that, he started writing Westerns. He was writing Westerns. That's how he broke into the genre. And he wrote about Arizona a lot before he had ever even traveled here. Hadn't even been here, and he got a subscription to Arizona Highways magazine, and that's where he gleaned his descriptions from and stuff. So there's a couple of his that I love and that I sort of read over and over and over, about every year. I read once again, and one of them is Valdez is Coming. And it's just this great, gritty, old school Western with a lot of style and rich dialogue and characters, and it just always takes me back. It takes me back to that time. It transports me. It takes me back to that era, and it's just a joy. That's one. I have an old copy, and it's just so worn out. That's the power of having a good book, of a great author that can take you back, that can transport you to wherever they want you to go, and that you get to enjoy over and over again.
Those were the voices of just a few of the visitors to last weekend's Tucson Festival of Books. Listen for more literary recommendations in the coming weeks here on Spotlight. Films that depict what it's like to live with anxiety often get things wrong, either playing it broadly for laughs or implying that it can be like having a superpower. It's refreshing to hear that a new film from Mexico shows the subject with some sensitivity, using a little humor but avoiding mockery. Here's film essayist Chris DeShiel to tell us more.
Corina, the debut feature from writer-director Ursula Barba Hoffner, takes a fresh approach to anxiety disorders, which are usually presented in a reductive way, in a film about a young woman with agoraphobia. The main character, Corina, is from Guadalajara, or to be more precise, one small neighborhood in Guadalajara, where she lives with her mother, shops at a nearby grocery, and works as a style editor for a local publishing house a few blocks away. She refuses to venture outside the few square blocks that constitute her neighborhood. Judging by the art decoration in the movie, particularly the outdated-seeming computers, I would guess the time period is the early 2000s. The production design and use of color are delightfully retro, evoking a somewhat imaginary realm where eccentricity is allowed to flourish. This is a dry, understated comedy that held my attention all the way, largely because of the wonderful actress in the title role, Leon Gonzalez-Norvine. The film doesn't need to define agoraphobia for us. Besides the fact that Corina stays inside a few block radius, Gonzalez-Norvine's performance, with her intense silences, overly cautious body language, and concentrated facial expressions, conveys its reality. In a brief early sequence, we learn how Corina's father was killed in a freak accident, traumatizing her mother, who passed the trauma on to her. But the director's intuitive approach lets us experience things from Corina's point of view, so her disorder is not seen from a typical outsider perception, but as part of the film's style, patiently attentive and detailed, matter-of-fact in the way it depicts Corina's compulsive mannerisms, such as counting her steps on the way to work. Gonzalez-Norvine is a hypnotic presence. She becomes this unique character. The story, by Hopfina and frequent collaborator Samuel Sosa, is light, even fanciful at times, but it's also funny and emotional. It works well. At her job, Corina overhears that the reclusive woman novelist who wrote the publishing house's most successful series has completed her latest submission with a very unhappy ending, considered unsuitable by the company. Amidst the turmoil of the publishers trying to persuade the author to rewrite, Corina finds a copy of the manuscript and takes it home, deciding to try rewriting it herself. This improbable but pleasurable storyline explores the nature of artistic creation and the myths based on ego and control that surround it. Each time you think the movie is going where you expect, it surprises you. Even the less than admirable characters, like the head publisher and her assistants, are treated with the warmth and humanism that characterizes this marvelous film. Corina is a savory treat. For Arizona Spotlight, this is Krista Shield.
Cinema Tucson presents a screening of Corina at the Fox Tucson Theater next Wednesday, March 26th at 7 p.m. We have a link for more information and the film's trailer on the Arizona Spotlight page at azpm.org. Now another chapter of a special project called the Class of 2024. The students that graduated from Tucson High Magnet School last fall were unique, a generation who had grown up in the public school system together with active shooter drills since kindergarten. They began their high school careers in 2020 under the shadow of the global COVID-19 pandemic. Art Almquist, the drama teacher at Tucson High for 28 years, made the decision to retire last year, leaving behind a thriving drama department and a theater that was named after him. After an important group conversation, Mr. Almquist suggested to his most dedicated students that they try their hand at composing essays that portray different aspects of their high school experience, with COVID, social media, and the shadow of a potential school shooting. In response were 8 essays that challenged commonly held perceptions of what their generation experienced. One thing they may have learned is the importance of practicing emotional intelligence and giving themselves time to process big events. But many lines became blurred when social distancing required students to take their classes online amidst the emotional turmoil of the pandemic.
My name is Katya from the class of 24, and this is my story. I'm sitting in the waiting room of my last class of the day, ready to disappoint another teacher, and this teacher is already disappointed in me since I won't turn in this project that was due a few days ago. He keeps nagging me to turn it in every time I attend, but what am I supposed to do? Tell him I can't focus because my mom is a mess, all because my grandma died? No way. I'll just sit here and do nothing. Listen to what was happening around me. Just watch and wait. Earlier today in my first period, English, aka the worst class ever, I was just doing as I promised myself. Sit, wait, and listen. However, before class ended, my teacher held me back in the call. What's going on? Why aren't you turning in your work? I didn't want to tell him what was happening at home, nor did I have to, but I did. His response? I'm sorry to hear that, but make sure you get your work in. 'Cause that's what I needed to hear. He definitely cared more about a student clearly grieving than homework. After that train wreck, though, it was time for my favorite class of the day, theater. This teacher was awesome. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely interested in what was going on in our lives and what we had to say. At the beginning of every class, he would ask us how we were doing, any good or bad news we would like to share. I didn't have to tell him what happened, but I did. Privately, of course. I didn't want anyone else to know it was me. And what he said was the most comforting thing I had heard all day. I'm so sorry to hear that. You don't have to share that out loud to anyone if you don't want to. He was right. I didn't have to tell anyone anything. So I didn't, for the rest of the day. Almost at the end of the day. Just get through this last period, and you can just shut down. My teacher starts talking, and once again in front of everyone. So, where's your project? I don't have to share anything out loud if I don't want to. So I just stay silent. He then pulls me and another student into a separate room. I know this guy isn't turning in assignments either, because his teacher would tell everyone. He did this twisted form of roll call that we'll call shame call. He would start class by going through who was in there and telling everyone who had missing assignments. So-and-so is missing these 2 assignments. This person is missing 3. So on and so forth. That's how I knew about the other guy. He talks to the other student first. I don't remember what, because I didn't care to listen. When he got to me, he was talking about how I used to always be on top of my work, and how he's worried about me. I didn't have to tell him anything, but I also couldn't. He would just keep on talking. It's like he's talking back and forth to a wall. He then tells this wall, You need to stop being an idiot and do your work. Now, he didn't actually call me an idiot, but I'm not allowed to say what he really called me. I just left the call and shut my computer off. I didn't know what to do. I've never had a teacher call me something like that before. Maybe I was an idiot. I mean, I didn't even cry when my dad told me my grandma passed. Doesn't that make me a heartless idiot? He made it harder by continuing to call me that, as if it was my new name, or who I was meant to be. It's my fault I didn't cry. It's my fault I didn't do the project. That's why he'd call me that. And I held up my reputation of an idiot when he saw me in summer school making up a credit. He just looked at me with disappointment, but I could tell he wanted to laugh. I never did turn in that project, so I got a 0 for the assignment, but he also got $0 on his paycheck for saying another swear word to a student the next year, resulting in him getting fired. So, who's the idiot now?
To hear more heartfelt, hopeful, and sometimes harrowing essays, check for the Class of 2024 page at azpm.org. There's something very powerful about a single voice sharing a true story. It gives a chance for the storyteller to let their personality shine and forge new connections with anyone who takes the time to listen. In support of this important community tradition, Arizona Spotlight is featuring a different storyteller on the third Thursday of every month. Here's Tony Paniagua to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Mark. Our storyteller this month is Mary Jo Pollock. She grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, but moved to California decades ago to escape the bitter winters in her native state. When her mother passed away in California, Mary Jo relocated to Tucson in 2014, where she already knew some people. She discovered a few storytelling groups soon after that and has never looked back. The biggest benefit, she says, is expanding a growing social circle in a welcoming community, but she also gains confidence and enjoys being on stage. Here is Mary Jo Pollock with a special recollection going back several decades.
I'm sitting in a brand new Delta 88 in Univac parking lot in St. Paul, Minnesota. My father's in the passenger seat, and he's about to give me my first driving lesson. But first, he's going over every feature of the car. He sells cars, but I'm not buying this car. I just want to drive this car. Finally, he hands me the keys. I put in the ignition. He tells me, turn on the ignition, put your foot on the brake, move the shift into drive, and accelerate. I turn on the ignition. I put my foot on the brake. I put the car into drive, and I hit the accelerator, and we lurch forward. I hit the brake, and we jerk back, and he starts yelling at me. I start crying, and it's lurch, jerk, yell, cry, lurch, jerk, yell, cry, for about a minute until I put the car in park, turn it off, open the door, get out, and start walking the mile or so home while I'm crying. He's following me at the speed I'm walking with the window down. Honey, honey, I'm sorry. Please get in the car. I'm sorry. And about a block from the house, I got in the car. And when we walked in, my mom took one look at us and knew it did not go well. I run crying up to my bedroom while they discuss who's going to teach Mary Jo to drive, because obviously my father doesn't have the temperament for it, and my mother wants no part of it. They come up with Pete the Cop Dinovic. He's a retired cop in St. Paul, Minnesota, and he sells them the 6-lesson package so that I learn all different kinds of driving and parking and all of that. For my first lesson, we walk out to his car. He's in the passenger seat. I'm in the driver's seat, and I notice there's a brake on his side of the car. You know, Pete the Cop Dinovic is a smart man. He hands me the keys. I put them in the ignition. He tells me to put my foot on the brake, put the car in drive, and just lightly tap the accelerator as I merge into the traffic lane. I turn on the ignition. I check all my mirrors. I look over my shoulder. I put my foot on the brake pedal, I move the car into drive, and I slowly accelerate into the traffic lane on Highland Parkway in St. Paul, Minnesota. I drive all the way to the corner. I stop at the stop sign. I put on the right-hand turn signal. I turn right on Cleveland, and we continue through my 6 lessons of driving, and I've learned almost everything. Pete the Kopdinovic suggested to my parents that they pay for a 7th lesson on freeway driving. And they do, because teenagers should know how to drive at 65 miles an hour. After my 7 driving lessons, my mom takes me down for my driving test. On July 16th, 1964, with a grade of 70, the lowest passing score in the state of Minnesota, I get my driver's license. And my mom lets me drive home. And when we get home, I say, "Oh, could I borrow the car to go to Ruthie's?" "No." "Well, what? Why not?" "Your father and I discussed that you haven't had enough experience, and we want to be in the car with you until we're more confident about your ability." "Oh, you are so unfair. The state of Minnesota just gave me a driving license and you won't let me use the car? You are so mean." I go running up to my bedroom crying. I'm calling out my friends, telling them about this tragedy. But about a week later, I went down to visit my cousins in Illinois. And I told my Aunt Evelyn that I had my driver's license. And she said, "Oh, well, I'll take you for a little ride in my car. And if you do okay, I'll let you use my car when I'm working." She had a home-based business. We go for a ride. I cannot believe that my parents did not clue her in. And she tells me I did okay and I can use the car. The next day she said, "I'm booked all day. If you guys want to use the car to do something, you can." So, okay. My cousin's only 15, so she doesn't drive yet. And we decided to go shopping, and our grandmother, who lives with them, gave us some money so we could buy school clothes. And we're headed to the mall, and I said, "Well, don't you think that the Marshall Fields in Chicago would have more cute clothes than the Marshall Fields in Joliet?" "Yeah, good idea. Can you get us there? I don't know the way." "Yeah, no problem." And of course, the freeway part, I have already had an hour driving on the freeway, and it's almost 2 hours by the time we get to Chicago. But Lakeshore Drive was another matter. There's like 100 lanes of traffic in each direction, and they're all going so fast. It's zoom, 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 zoom. And Fran, get me to a parking lot. Finally, we arrived at Marshall Field. I parked the car. And when we were shopping and trying on clothes, I forgot about all the driving drama. Getting home was much easier. We showed everybody our purchases, but we never mentioned exactly which Marshall Field we went to. When I got back to Minnesota, I asked my parents again if I could use the car, and they said no. You know, Aunt Evelyn let me use her car, and Fran and I went all over. We went shopping, we went to the pool, we visited our friends and cousins, and I think if Aunt Evelyn let me use her car, you should let me use your car. And they finally relented, but there were rules. Who I could have in the car, who I couldn't have in the car, where I could go, where I couldn't go. It was endless. But one Sunday afternoon, about a week before school's going to start, it's a glorious day. And I ask for the car. And I go and I pick up a bunch of my friends. I was only supposed to have 1 or 2 in the car. And we go over to Minneapolis. I wasn't supposed to go to Minneapolis. And we go to this teenage hangout, Paul Pearson's drive-in. I wasn't supposed to go there. I wasn't even supposed to go there if I wasn't driving. And we pull in and we order Cokes and French fries. And there's a car full of boys parked next to us. And we're talking to them and laughing and just being 16-year-olds. Then we left. I drove all my friends home. I'm in the car by myself, driving back to my house. And I'm thinking, oh, This is it. This is the first step toward my independence.
Mary Jo Pollock participates in local groups such as Odyssey Storytelling, Female Storytellers of Tucson, and Tellers of Tales. She has also won 2 competitions at the Moth in Phoenix and has performed in California, New York, South Carolina, and other states. During the pandemic, she found a storytelling group online called SWAP. Since then, she's been able to meet the core members in person. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Tony Paniagua.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. The show is a production of AZPM. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. The assistant producer is Sophia Hammer. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.